Hello, everybody. It is August 16th, 2023. I'm Aurora. This class is called Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. This is the original curriculum that I developed way back in 2012/2013/2014 is when I did some of the advanced lessons. And these are meant to be primary foundation knowledge for the activity that is Flying Rainbow Lasagna. That all of this is meant to be part of the basis and the substrate upon which that activity is based. So I always want to keep the focus on lasagna. Where's my lasagna? Here's one right here. Focus is always on lasagna. That's why we learn about all of these different things and what is the meaning and import. So today's class is, let me read from my meticulously prepared notes. Hold on a second. The origins of solar consciousness. So in this class, and also in Path of Light. And I'm going to give you guys a little appetizer of what Path of Light stuff is. And then I'm going to restart that class, not this Saturday, but I think next Saturday. Restart the semester on Saturdays. Why do I focus so much on the sun, on the stars, and on stellar consciousness, and on pure light itself? Like, this is a Flying Rainbow Lasagna class, right? It is, absolutely. What is the meaning and the purpose of Flying Rainbow Lasagna? That, of course, it is a beautiful activity, just like any dance can be a beautiful activity that is a form of pure self-expression, but it also is a meaningful and a purposeful dance, or a dance that had a necessity in its formation or development. You could say that it's a movement that is helping to bring together formally divergent realms, and it is done in a very artistic and beautiful and meaningful and expressive way that also expresses patterns of divine truthfulness. And also, again, serves a purpose or has a meaning to it. So it's kind of like in the way that, you know, sometimes you dance, but then a dance is also like a propulsion system to get, I don't want to say from point A to point B because it's not a linear dance, but to get quote unquote somewhere. And I'm just going to mute you guys, not because I don't love you, but just to help for the sake of the recording, all right? And I always give opportunities for people to unmute at the end of the presentation, because actually I love to see people's faces and hear your voices. But back to Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and why do I teach about solar consciousness? What is the connection? So there are many impediments to full connection. I should say better words. Up until this point, there have been many impediments in blocking out humanity, definition of what it is to be in a human body, from full connection to the sun and the stars and stellar consciousness. And by when I say that, I am including the entire stellar network. The entire network of every star, an almost uncountable number of stars, each of which, or each of whom, has its own unique personality, characteristics, personhood, sentience, and also acts as a communicative node or neuron in a vast system. So big takeaway from today. All of the stars are connected. Big takeaway from today. The very basis of what you are in terms of matter is star. You are made of stars. And I know that there's even some kind of like pat song lyrics about this, but this, you know, what I mean like simplistic, but in the deepest sense, not only the atomic structure, the atoms that you are made out of were, through the process that humans describe as nucleogenesis, the complexity building of atomic structures in the levels of great intensity, pressure, and passion that are inside of a star creates matter, literally. But that's on a very objective materialist level. And this class goes way beyond just 5 sense objective materialism, even as it's described by, let's say, the complex math processes that current level human scientists use to explore and describe the world. Yes, nucleogenesis happens, and also your partnership with the sun and the stars, let's say on a more abstract, purely observership and energetic level, based level, is part of what brings matter into being. So there's different stories. This is cosmogenesis. What, mommy, daddy, how did I get here? What's the story of matter? How did I get into this stuff? Where did all this stuff come from? So one story is told to your intellect. It says, ah, yes, the calcium in your bones. It was made in the death throes of a star. And I'm also going to talk a lot about how in my class from 10 years ago, I really described the life cycle of a star as including death. I like calling it now something that is evolution. To say that, because there's actually some good writing about this, the evolution of a star, evolutionary process. So we can talk about the life cycle of a star, and that is very, very valid because we're in this world of mortality. And the world of mortality, things have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so even when you are in a mortal form, one tends to project that upon the totality of existence and to say, when you see a certain stage of evolution of the star consciousness, kaput. That's the end. I joke about this. Dun, 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 dun. That's the end. But that's not the end. So in good respect to the work from 10 years ago, I did talk about the ongoing redefinition of looking at death in a different way. And many people have done some good work in their spiritual self-cultivation, in looking at death not as an end, the way that the objective materialist views it. Kind of like, there's your dead corpse, there's nothing animating it or making it move around anymore, therefore it is the end of you. But a very real recognition of the continuity of consciousness on your journey of consciousness and how you are evolving through multiple different incarnations, or let's call it instead formfulnesses, because incarnation looks like being in the flesh, but we're talking about a star is inhabiting matter. Is plasma a form of matter? The answer is yes. Although it's a big giant ball of light in the sky, plasma has mass. Let me say that again. Even though it's a big giant ball of light in the sky, stars are plasma and plasma has mass. Plasma is stuff. It's the stuff that we call matter. So even as I refer to a time that is known as ancient or concurrent Atlantis, or if you might internally have a nonverbal remembrance of what it was like to be a purely energetic, pure consciousness and living in these states of total divine freedom at some point in your development, prior to or concurrent to your inhabitation of matter. Stars also have an abstract presence, and in that abstract presence there is total freedom and total divine perfection. And one of the things that I really wanted to emphasize and reiterate very with value from 10 years ago is my teaching about the meaningfulness of why a star is in existence, going through a sense of refinery and moving towards freedom. But I kind of framed it 10 years ago as a struggle, and even though I know that we face many struggles, and I just openly acknowledge spiritual battle and spiritual warfare that we're experiencing, here's my beautiful picture about like ascension, but also in many, many ways it's a very difficult process where you're kind of like fighting your way through these barriers to be able to return to that realm of immortality. But in a better languaging, instead of framing it as a struggle, to be able to say that this is, soul evolution and I don't know if renewal is the word, but strengthening, the process of strengthening and focusing and returning to and self-remembrance. You're on that journey and the sun is on that journey too. That's what that painting is really about. I should actually pull up that painting so that you could really see it. I did not prepare that for class, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, well, I think I really want to do that. And now let me see if there's just an easy way for me to find it in one of my files. Just hold on a second. Now I'm squinting and scrolling, which I always try not to bore you with on my class. Yeah. That's an okay picture of that. It's not the clearest picture. I'm very self-critical sometimes because I'm like, I want to give you guys the best, nicest picture. Let's just show this to you. Because I'm trying to say I have many, many versions. I have many, many photographs of this painting, and I'm trying to make it the nicest that you can possibly see. This painting is called Birth of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and usually I have it over my shoulder, and I'm like, hey, it's back there, you guys, and I don't think you can really see the details effectively enough. Now I hope you can see it. The little silver dots represent Earth's toroidal energy sphere, and energy field. It's also known as the magnetosphere, and it's shaped like a donut. Where's my donut shape? Oh, I could hold up one of these guys. I could hold up one of my golden donuts. This is a donut shape, but I usually, these are some orgonite projects that I've been working on. I usually hold up this, which is more like a line drawing in space that shows you what a torus or a double toroid is shaped like, and that is the shape of Earth's magnetosphere, and that is the shape of the sun's heliosphere, and that is also the shape of your individuated energy field. And that the big story here is that everything that's happening to you is happening to all of these other levels of you, which includes yourself as the sun, and yourself as the planet, and yourself as the entirety of the galaxy. So this ascension that is happening right now is not, hold on one second, oh good, is not merely about you as one person. I don't know if that even could be considered, but it would be kind of like jump out the window, everyone else, like, I'm ascending, I don't care about anything else. Like, it's just not possible. It's just not possible to be that way, because it is such a experience that involves everything. But maybe it has been, I'm joking that I have to say this, but maybe it's effective because maybe it's been portrayed that way in human culture. Like, there's one special guy, kind of like, the sense of hierarchy, one special king or one special rock star, and that's the special person. And then everyone else, like, the rest of you are all chopped liver. And that one special guy ascends, but the rest of you, again, chopped liver, or, meaningless inconsequentiality. But that's not what's going on right now on the planet at all. And that is really not the definition of what ascension is. Even when one person has that achievement or experience, it doesn't mean that it's just the diminishment or the leaving behind of all of these other levels of consciousness, like, see ya, like I leave you in the dust. Because ascension really is this rejoining to unity consciousness, best said, refocusing to unity consciousness, and the sense of remembering the everythingness that you are, including the people or levels of consciousness that you are focusing away from as you go towards, God's self-remembrance, and remembering yourself as the totality. Basically, you don't get less connected, you get more connected. You don't feel like, oh, I leave you all behind. Good luck, see ya, suckers. You feel more connected to them than ever because they are you. All right, so all of that being said, this is what this painting is about. It is about the transformation of Earth's toroidal energy field into a flying rainbow lasagna shaped energy field. And that happens at the same time that the sun and the sun's heliosphere is transforming. So when I'm trying to communicate, like, I make these paintings, and these paintings are symbolic gestures, and then, wasn't sure, but like it became very evident to me, not everybody is perceiving the meaningfulness that I'm putting into these symbols. I got to tell you, with my with my moving mouth parts here, hold on a moment. I have to overtly articulate what these paintings are about. And especially because I didn't just make them in order for it to be kind of like, up for consideration. I'm like, no, this is very important information I'm trying to share with you. The sun is evolving. The planet is evolving. You are evolving. And you are doing all of these things concurrently. You are a tiny fractal microcosm of the planet, one cell, like a cell in the trillions of cells of your body. You live inside of an ecosystem, and the planet and that ecosystem context or paradigm exists within the paradigm of the sun's consciousness and helio consciousness. And solar consciousness exists within the paradigm of the larger neurological network that is the stellar network. And each of the stars, like I said, have their own colors or flavors of personality characteristics. Just like I tell you that ascended masters, they're not just all like vanilla milkshakes, very boring, bland, whatever, flavorless, even though I know vanilla is technically a flavor. But you know what I'm talking about. It's not exactly like the super rainbow swirl with every, mango-licious flavor that is possible. That's a vanilla, to contrast with vanilla. The stars are absolutely mango-licious swirls. They've got their own unique recipe of personality characteristics, and that relates directly to the levels of light that are emitted that we know and can see and measure as optical light. So there's a color recipe that comes from the sun that is this rainbow, This is why I am obsessed with rainbows. It's not because of like positive associations with childhood fantasies or, you know, any other cultural level of interpretation of the symbol of what the rainbow is. It is strictly because of the primacy of white light, which is the recipe that comes from our sun star. But white light is unity consciousness coming from all of these stars and from the galactic center. When it is refracted by a crystalline structure, like a prismatic crystal, it is divided or refracted into its various elements. And the elements are the colors of the rainbow. Let me talk with pictures, because this is the better way of telling you about all of this stuff that's going on. So this is part of my actual class notes. Okay, wait, first I will start off with, let me just adjust my equipment here a little bit. Prismatic crystal. So usually they're triangular or sometimes kind of shaped like, you know, a long triangle like that. I don't have gray. Let me just use this black color in order to represent white light. Like, Aurora, you're using black to represent white light. That's it. I can't take this class. Get out. No! There's a white background. There is a white background. So look, if I draw white on the white background, guys, look. Just that, you can't see that. Boom, 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 boom. Okay? That's what this is what's going on here. I'm looking out for you. That white light, this beam of white light over here, represents the color recipe of everything mushed together into one big giant delicious thing that is called the primacy of white light. When it comes through this specially shaped structure, that is a crystalline structure, the light is slowed down at different rates, and then here comes red. And I will go through the entire litany because I'm that way. And then here comes, oh, that's not the right color. So, my goodness. Here comes orange. And then here comes yellow, which I already did, ahead, too far ahead. And then here comes green. That's not a good one. Let's do it better. Oh, it's going to be like that, guys. There's green. Then there's light blue. And then there's dark blue. You know, this is so hard to do sometimes. I'm a really good artist, but just the digital pen here is so hard to do. And then one more. Violet. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. All of these are the individualized ingredients of this white light over here, which would be considered the cake. All right? So if you've ever made a cake, there is a lot of flour. This is red, that's flour. There's a lot of matter. Red represents matter, physical stuff. And then there's a lot of sugar. That's this, the emotional realm of emotional energy. And then there's a bit of eggs. That's this, these yellow eggs over here, intellectual stuff. And then, of course, there's flavorings like maybe cocoa powder or something like that. That's your heart. That is unconditional love and the primacy of the currency of unconditional love. And then there's these other little things, like you're going to have a dash of salt, a little bit of baking soda, and then a little tiny dash of, you know, flavorings or vanilla extract or something like that. These are small quantities that really make things happen. If you don't put in the right amount of salt and baking soda, like you don't have a cake, you just have like a flatbread. You know what I mean? It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. These are all the individual ingredients, and you have to have them in the right divine harmonic proportions, which is just like music. Hold on, this is going to sound crazy. It's not too loud for you. Harmonic proportions, okay, it's set up for a solo, not really a chord. But harmonic proportions. Harmonic proportions meaning the notes that add together to make a chord that sounds fantastic. And when you eat a cake, you're not like, well, first I'm going to eat all of the molecules of baking soda, then I will eat all of the molecules of flour, then I will eat all of the molecules of egg. Like that would not only taste terrible. If you've ever tried to eat a spoonful of baking soda, it tastes horrible. But that's not the correct experience of what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to taste a little bit of everything all at once, but not the same amount of everything all at once. That is the essence of what I'm teaching you with this rainbow map of consciousness or map of the subtle energy world. So all of these layers matter, and these layers exist in the toroidal structure, but I'm always just holding up my rainbow lasagna sculptures, and they exist in the next highest dimensional level of your toroidal structure, which is the flying rainbow lasagna. You will always have the most matter, physicality presence. Then you will have slightly less emotional presence, all the way up to that tiny dash of violet, and that is your divine connection. And that is extremely crucial to have that. If you leave out the divine connection, the recipe is not complete. And I drew that out for you because this really relates also to the time cones that I'm always sharing with you, and the sense of what it is to be an ascended master. So you guys have been in my class for a long time. I love using my shorthand and being able to talk with you about this. Let's draw the time vortex. Technically it's not a cone, but I always draw this shape over here. It's a cross section of a vortex. And then I always draw the central core timeline, and today I'm going to draw it. This is just terrible. I'm melting. I can't do it. Okay, try to make a straight line. Make another straight line. Oh, it almost happened, guys. It's going to happen. Try it again. I did it. Hooray. All right. So I wanted to make it white, but of course I cannot draw white on a white background. But properly done, when I draw this diagram, that path of least likelihood, the central core timeline that exists at the center or epicenter of all of your vortices that comprise your chakras or energy centers or time body or light body. Central core timeline is white light. And now I want to relate this to cells in your physical body. All right, here's an exaggerated drawing of a cell in your physical body, and here's like another cell next to it, and here's another cell in the background. That one lives like kind of a couple of whatever centimeters away, and here's another cell. You know, they're all clustered together. Each one of your cells is contains this rainbow structure. So that's very big, because I'm always pointing to, like, my forehead is where dark blue or indigo lives. My crown, that's where violet lives. And so you're going to think, oh, like, violet's only on the top of Aurora's head, and Aurora's toes have no violet. No, my toes have violet inside of them. Let's grab a violet color here. You know where my toes have a violet divine connection inside of them? Right here. This is in the epicenter of the cell, and it's my nuclei. And my nuclei contain DNA, as do yours. And your DNA containing nuclei are your connection to the divine. Because I don't have white to use effectively as a color, I'm going to use black. But inside of every single one of those purple nuclei, that is where you have this thread of white light. That you could think of it as a little tiny star that resides inside of you. And it's singularity. You have singularity at the center of every single cell of your body. Let's just make it a little tiny black dot in order to represent something that's actually white. Little tiny dot. Inside of every single one of your cells, you've got this connection to singularity, and that is what this is. So it's hugely important to recognize this, because what if there was a problem with the top of your head? What if there was something, you know, that came between you and a higher consciousness at that level of the top of your head? Would it be the end of everything and the end of your divine connection? You'd be like, no, I could connect through my elbow. I can connect through my big toe. You have that connection throughout the entirety of your body. Let me drink a little bit of water and then relate this to a new video that I watched. And I can link to the video too. Video is about the morphogenic field space, and that is the field space that pre-exists DNA as a complex biological structure and pre-exists your brain as a complex neurological cognitive structure. They did all these horrible mutilative experiments with flatworms. Flatworms are called planaria, and they're kind of amazing because they self-regenerate. And so, like, scientists that I do not agree with did things like cut them in half, cut them into 24 pieces, and do all sorts of things with them to make them have two heads. That's just not right. They're like, yes, we did extensive experiments to mutilate these worms in order to, you know, demonstrate these things. I'm like, that is not okay. I speak for worms and all consciousnesses when I say stop cutting things into 24 pieces and making them have two heads. But all of that really lightheartedness aside, because those disturbances that happen there propagate outward through the entirety of DNA and the morphogenic field. Like you're taking blowback for those worms. You got to understand this, guys, all right? So it's not okay to mutilate things, because what they did was mutilate the pattern that controls the pattern. Your DNA is an incredible pattern expression mechanism, but what these presentations and scientific wonderments proved and demonstrated was that it's not the end all be all, because what they did was they changed the morphogenic field, meaning the shape creating primary thought field structure, and they didn't change the DNA, because we're facing a lot of challenges in our world right now, and things that definitely mutilate DNA, and DNA as being directly connected through the dance and its dance movements to being propelling you through time, and not just to the shape of your protein structures of your body, but to the shape of the events of your life, the things that are going to happen to you. Those things are written in your DNA, and they are expressed in the dance movement of your DNA, which is what I mean when I say like the dance of the flying rainbow lasagna propels you in moving through time. But preceding DNA and even superseding and transcending DNA, there is the morphogenic field, which is the pattern that is the first thought or intention or consciousness intention that DNA expresses. So there's like a story and a shape and a form and a way of being that the morphogenic field expresses. And that's like what you look like and who you are as a person and what kind of organism you're supposed to be. And what they found out is that these scientists, you can mess with DNA, and that makes mutants and weird things like that, but somehow these organisms put themselves back together. Like they did all these things with tadpoles and like little amphibians and all these little things that are trying to grow into their proper biological form. And so the scientists are like, well, what if we do this and mess that up? We stick an eyeball in the wrong place. What if we do this? What if we do this? What if we do this? And the organism kept on being like, I'm going to be the right shape anyway. And the scientists are like, look at that. What if we mess with your morphogenic field? That's the kind of like the vision that you have in your mind of how you're supposed to be shaped. Like if you lost a limb, if you had an amputation, you still have a shape in your mind of the template of what you're supposed to be shaped like. And then everything else in reality, in material structure, rearranges itself according to and around that template. And if you mess with that template, which is purely energetic and is not material, then the material world rearranges itself according to that new, not improved, but highly distorted and mutilated vision of what it is. And that's what they did to some of these flatworms, where they taught them like flatworms, they changed the morphogenic field of the flatworms to be erroneous, and to say flatworms have two heads instead of flatworms have a head and a tail, which is biologically correct and keeps the flatworm alive. And so what they did was they said to the flatworm's morphogenic field, you've got two heads. They didn't change the DNA. And then all the future generations that manifested through these replicative processes that the worm goes through had two heads. They didn't change the DNA, but they changed the structure that controls or informs, is a better word, the DNA, and that is called the morphogenic field. And that's a very important thing to recognize. That is where reality emanates from. It's the thought structure or the edifice or the scaffolding that holds up and emanates this reality. That's very big stuff. What I'm sharing there is not part of my original teaching from 10 years ago. But why I'm sharing it also is because the video is very valuable in that it talked about when there is disease in a biological form. And this is why I related to the presenter that I feel like was a positive person in making this video. But I decry their tactics. The sense of when a cell becomes disconnected from its environment. I'm not saying it right. When a cell becomes disconnected from all of its family, from all of its brethren, from all of its fellow cells all around it, and stops thinking of or considering them to be externalized aspects of self, then the cell returns to its original protozoic state, which is, I jokingly say, you know, the one-celled organism. Hey, I'm looking out for number one, and I don't gotta care about nobody else around me, right? When it returns to its primal protozoic one-celled organism attributes or approach to life, the rest of what it is submerged within just becomes environment. That part of the video really struck me deeply as profound truth, because I started to relate that to human consciousness. Humans feel that the earth is their environment as opposed to a body that you live within. In your own body, if you had a cell that stopped saying like, I'm part of the aurora body, like I'm just a cell. If the cell was like, I'm just a cell and I don't care, there's a bunch of other junk around me, I'm just me doing me. You can tell I have like attitude. I'm just me doing me. There's this junk around me. I know what it is. Stuff. Sometimes it gives me stuff like oxygen and nutrients. That is considered not to be a healthy cell. It's a cell that has lost its connectivity of cell-to-cell communication, considered to be like a state of disease. So let's clear away the state of disease from any cells in my body or in your body and talk about ideal levels of health, which is when the cells recognize through their connectivity that they are part of a larger network. Cells in your body, you want to know, like, wow, I'm an individual, but I'm also connected to all these other cells, and we make up a whole entire organism. Dun, 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 the planet. You're connected to all of these other people and all these other consciousnesses, including, like, my dog, flatworms. You get it? Someone's doing scientific mutilation experiments on flatworms. They're doing it to you. Because you're connected, because it's not just your stupid environment that sometimes brings you resources or sometimes takes metabolites away from you. It is yourself and the larger overarching organism known as the planet. So you have singularity inside of you. It's this doorway to infinity. The planet has doorway to infinity inside of her. Every single star has doorway to infinity inside of it. Every single photon has doorway to infinity inside of it. This is all singularity. And then I would love to invite you again, if you've got the guts, be a part of Path of Light on Saturday mornings. And I just say that because it takes like some like heavy lifting for your mind to comprehend what I talk about and what I diagram, but basically the stars are not distant like point A to point B. They are actually all overlapping. All overlapping, all overlapping, all overlapping. So first of all, you're a cell in a body. Body is the planet. The planet is not an individuated consciousness. It's part of your solar system. And everything that's here in your solar system has been given birth to by your parent. That's the sun. And everything that you're using in your body, not simplistically or prosaically, is from the stars. Not just the atomic structure, which arrived through nucleogenesis in one story, through quantum observership in another story, but all light. That your neurology is made out of light. You have signals that literally run throughout the neurons of your body. Your neurological impulses are made of light. And light is information, and light is sentience, and it is organized, and it is the same light that exists in and resides in the star. The star is a plasma being, which again hovers on the threshold of what humans with five senses define as matter. It is almost pure light, which is intangible, but is optically experienced, but is an impulse that has no mass. So stars create gravity. If my flying rainbow lasagna is a star, the star is heavy. It's a big, giant, massive thing. And if this is, the stretchy fabric of time, space, and consciousness, put a star into that fabric, it stretches it down. Now I have to make a distinction between the infinite stretching that happens, creating this singularity structure, and the star has a singularity structure inside of it, and you have one inside of you. Are you an infinitely heavy structure? You're like, no, Aurora, like I weigh like 150 pounds. Like, how dare you ask? I'm joking with people and their weight. No, you're not infinitely heavy. You are only between 1 and 200 pounds. And that's not enough to create like a gravity well. But the sun is so massive in its being and being a plasma that it's enough to create a gravity well, or our planet. but each one of these structures has a singularity inside of it. So singularity as it relates to a black hole is different than singularity as it relates to the infinite stretching of the fabric of space, time, and consciousness that I'm talking about on a subtle level. That's also path of light stuff. So I always, as I'm able to perceive and articulate on higher and higher levels, always going to refine my vision that I've shared in the past. So I share with you this primary empirical information from 10 years ago that's still very, very valid to your journey and your perspective of what is going on right now. Yes, these shapes are correct, and the way that I describe singularity is correct. Science also describes singularity. Here we're not talking about the transhumanist singularity. Here we are talking about science which uses high-level math as a type of extrasensory perception to perceive in a way that, like, you can't stick an eyeball there, but you can sense with mathematical computations what's going on. It's kind of like, if this, then this, then this, then this, then this, and add a dash of this, that's the conclusion right there, all right? So it's a laborious way of being able to arrive at somewhat correct conclusions, which is what happens in a black hole. And a black hole is what happens at the evolution of a sun, at the evolution of a star, not at the death of a star. Wait, let me keep drinking. Keep drinking water. I'm always so concerned that my words are going to be taken out of context. Keep drinking water, everyone. Speaking of taking words out of context, my lesson from 10 years ago gives rise to a lot of things that I think were cherry-picked and possibly magnified through not even the experiencers of the community known as the New Age community or the community of spiritual seekers, but I actually think through like a much darker and more malevolent agency or organization. It's like, let's take Aurora's stuff, but let's take this, this, and this, totally wildly distort it, and then feed it back into the community and say that it's this. And that's why I rant about New Age shadow work. Because I talk about this concept of light on its journey, light becoming matter, light becoming solidified matter, and the absence of light, which is shadow. Let's just draw it. Here is a light source that is known as the sun star, emitting light. This is not a very good drawing already. Here's an object. That light coalesces and slows down into a physical, materialized object, and the process of that slowing down often involves a miraculous process called photosynthesis that I can tell you about more in the Path of Light. And then you get this over here. This is like original art school stuff. This is a shadow. And when I put that there, that's a little symbolic gesture, but your eye reads that and says, oh, look, well, look, there's a table here. It's a still life. That's an apple, and that's a shadow. And we learn in art school, shadows make objects like sit down. They make them be instead of just like floating in space. And the idea is that if I just change colors here, light would have been flowing all the way in this direction if it didn't interact with the material world. Light is non-material. So again, the plasma being that is known as a sun or a star is alive, conscious, and organized enough to be able to emit light, which are ideas and timelines and reality structures. The reality structures you're inhabiting all come from the sun and the stars. The reality structures that you're inhabiting all come from the sun and the stars. The reality structures that you're inhabiting all come from the sun and the stars. The reality structures that you're inhabiting, this is what they're shaped like. This comes from the sun and the stars. If you're ever wondering, like that old joke, like who writes this stuff? It's the sun and the stars. And they don't know everything. They're working on refining their vision. They're working on refining their self-expression. This reality that you are experiencing, this iteration or version of reality, this particular dimension, and the permutations of your life and the permutations of all the lives around you are the end result of the sun's evolution and the stars' collective neurological evolution as a system, as a network, stellar network. They're like, I'm learning. When I play a song, sometimes my pinky slips and I'm like, that was wrong. Played the wrong note. What do? you correct it, you play it better the next time. The sun is, and this is also path of light stuff, consistently emitting reality structures, sensing them, evaluating them, then correcting them. Emitting reality structures through these organized beams of light. And you're experiencing those organized beams of light comes into your pineal gland, comes into your light body or your time body. You eat them, remember, like Pac-Man, the one video game that I'm familiar with. You chomp them one moment at a time. Chomp, chomp, chomp. You chomp, chomp time with your pineal gland. Okay, a better wording is that your pineal gland receives, or your indigo chakra receives, time emanations, and those time emanations are cognitive events, levels of perception with your multiple senses, and edifices. Like, that's like a narrative, something happens. I always use this as an example. Get in your car and drive to the store and buy coconut milk for your coffee in the morning. A thing happened. So just like I tell you about the dance of your DNA has a code for, like, what color are your eyes? Okay, we're going to make protein structures like this. Your eyes are brown. But your DNA also has a code that's driving to the store on August 16th, and buying your coconut milk. That's also part of the code that is inside of your DNA. It is very highly organized, non-random, and of course your own free will and decision-making choices, especially in a pristine environment, are what determines your pathway through time. But everything that you're doing and every single decision-making node that you make as a larger overarching organism and all of your cell membranes, boom, got trillions of cells in your body, and every single cell has a cell membrane that's making choices all the time about what's allowed to go inside. Like, here's the cell membrane, right? And like, here's like a little hormone or a nutrient or something, and it comes and it's like, knock, 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 can I come in? And the cell membrane makes a choice. Like, either you can come in or you can't come in or get out, you know, nutrient or virus or pathogen, like, get out, get out, get out. No, you can come in. And all of those, and also sometimes it doesn't come in. Sometimes it's like, no, you can just lodge in the membrane and be there and wave around and do stuff. Cell membranes make an enormous number of choices every second of your day. So you have cell-to-cell communication. That's the individual, formerly protozoic cell, now multicellular inhabitant and participant of your body that's not just looking out for number one. It's like, I'm doing my own thing, but I'm in an environment and everyone, I'm connected to everyone else. I'm doing my thing for the whole, doing it for everyone, and everyone's got to do that. And that's really what you want to model and be a template for in your community. This is responsibility towards yourself as an individual and responsibility towards the community. You're like, yep, I want to do my thing and I want to have fun and have a good life and I want to make money, but I also want to serve my community and help the people around me and do good stuff so that everything stays alive. That's it. You get it? So there's a lot of pathogenesis in this world of individuals who are so disconnected from their community, from the other organisms around them, that they think that they're only responsible to themselves. They act as diseased cells within the planetary body, and they're only caring about their own profit and their own self-elevation, their own comfort, their own longevity. Like, if you don't care about your community and you just take care of number one and you don't care about longevity of other people around you, then you eventually be like, you're the only person. And then you don't have longevity because you can't just be one person and then expect to be sustained. That's a type of insanity. You got it? So this disconnection is a sign of mental imbalance. It's a sign of pathogenic structure. Disease. It's disease. The way that some humans act on this planet is diseased. And then you also have to recognize that your planet is not separate or distinct from the rest of the galaxy, and that you are connected to not only the sun intimately, and that painting, what I'm painting there is really the ups and downs and evolutionary cycle of your nearest star, which is the sun, and what the sun is doing is affecting Earth and all the other planets and you on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment level. And everyone's like a sun, like the star. They live for billions of years. Like, what's one day to them? One day is everything to them. My shoulders go down. Everything. One day is everything to them. That means like being 1 day late in cosmic time, it's like actually really pretty late, because you're supposed to be in a real-time rapport with the sun and the stars, so that the sun knows everything that's happening in every moment, because you are using borrowed resources from the sun and the stars. They're like, sure, here, have all of these atoms, have all of this light, have all of this sentience and all of this consciousness, have all these photons, have all these electrons, and do stuff with it, and keep me informed. Tell me what's going on with all that stuff of mine that you're doing stuff with, including time. And when you don't check in for a little while, the sun is like, hum-de-dum-dum, sure wonder what's going on down there with all of my stuff that I radiated and sent out. So I'm being very lighthearted and facetious. It's not your fault. The human race has been maliciously genetically modified many times to prevent you from having a direct and a clear rapport with the sun and the stars, so that you can say, oh, sun and stars, thank you so much for all of these timelines, nourishment, sustenance, idea, structures, for all of the sentience that I contain. Here's what's going on with me. Actually, you all, I think, deeply want to have that level of connection. And that I talked last week about the implantation of the human mind, human operating system, which is not natural to humans at all, and actually is really more of this monstrous, I hesitated to say monstrous, but this very, very distorted and malevolent presence that has been imposed upon humanity that cuts you off from divine connection and from connection to the solar consciousness. Flying rainbow lasagna. Why am I teaching you about all this stuff? It's why you need to do flying rainbow lasagna. Not that I'm here as some kind of like, manipulative advertiser, like 10 reasons why you need flying rainbow lasagna in your life, beginning with to transcend over genetic modifications that are unfair and unjust. Although, if I were to write an article like that in the more modern internet style, that would be number one. Flying rainbow lasagna is a tool for divine reconnection. It is a new genetic dance step or behavior that allows you to transcend and supersede limitations that were placed into your body, not by accident, very much on purpose, not through the fall of human consciousness, but that he was pushed through of human consciousness, again, making light of an extremely traumatic and profoundly distressing event. I hope never to, be diminishing it in any way, making light of it so that we can kind of like look at that, kind of squint your eyes, kind of look at that trauma, but through some lightheartedness to be able to even deal with what it is. There's a reason why you're ascending. You're like having to get back to a fast speed known as light speed. You're having to reconnect to stellar consciousness, which really represents divine intelligence, after being separated from divine intelligence. And being separated from divine intelligence is the end result of a highly traumatic event. And it's totally not according to divine plan. And so, yeah, the sun and the stars and divine intelligence did not say, hey kid, here's a bunch of resources. Go out and do something with it. Get out of my hair. No, really wanted to be intimately involved on every level and at every moment. Like, here is the gift of life. And here's the gift of existence. And here's what it is to be a biological form and to be alive. Do stuff and kind of like let's experience this together. But the sun, stars, and higher levels of organized presence, they are not embodied in the same way that you're embodied, but the sun has a body. The sun has a body, and the sun has an evolutionary cycle that in this world of mortality has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So what's the beginning of the life of a sun or a star? And I sometimes use the words interchangeably, so just forgive me for that. A bunch of hot gases and dust exist in what is known as interstellar space, and it's just kind of an amorphous blob. And then if you guys know what cymatics is, I think 10 years ago no one really knew about this. Now it is very, very well known. It's the idea of waves as an organizing principle. So it can be, in these cymatic experiments, tiny pieces of dust or baby powder, talcum, something like that, onto a plate. When you vibrate the plate, the dust vibrates into certain beautiful patterns. And the patterns have to do with interference patterns. Some places where waves amplify. When two waves come together, they amplify. And where two waves come together like this, they cancel out. So these patterns exist because sometimes the dust collects in some places, amplified. Some places the dust gets vibrated away from those areas. That's canceled out. And it makes beautiful, complex patterns, which will remind you very, very much about the paintings that I have in my background over here. Cymatics exist in the sense of galactic superwaves. These are waves that are so big, like for us, the biggest, longest wave in our optical spectrum is red. But there are waves that are so big that, like if this is my screen and the wave goes across, from corner to corner, the size of my screen is the galaxy. The galaxy. This is the galaxy screen over here. That's a huge wave. It's a galactic superwave that is so big that one semicircle of the wave is the size of a galaxy, which is enormous, almost incomprehensible to human consciousness in its present form. And human time span is so limited right now that if you were to perceive a moment of the galactic superwave, you might not even be able to perceive it as a continuity event. You would just see a tiny slice of it and not even really be able to know what it is. But these are organizational events that move through the potentiality of stuff known as a planetary nebula that makes it come into a star. And the experience of that coming into a star, being as a star, is just like conception. Master Cheeky has arrived. Wait, can you guys see? Master Cheeky, she just came in. Hooray. Princess Cheeky was sleeping in bed and keeping cool on a very, very hot day and just decided to come on in and be a part of class. But we'll do the WALK later. It's not time yet. I have to whisper. She knows anyway. She knows anyway. And I think that she listens to, I'm just being silly and breaking my train over here, but she listens to, the recording says like recording now. And then when you press off, it says recording is over. I think she listens for that. And then she comes over to me and she's like, is it time now? So she knows it's not time yet. Not time yet, girl. Okay. Galactic superwaves organize planetary nebulae into the presence that is the living presence known as a star, which is a porthole, a singularity container, and which is an alive being with sentience. And it has similar aspects to the moment of conception in human mammalian birth, like sperm meets egg, kapow, conception, and this amazing profusion of cells and exponential expansion and growth and life is what happens. And that is very similar to what happens in the coming togetherness of a star. And every time it doesn't happen perfectly, just like in conception in a physical body form, biological conception, it doesn't happen perfectly every time. Sometimes there are non-life-giving events that aren't conception. Sometimes it doesn't come fully to terms. Sometimes it doesn't create an organism, is what I'm trying to say. Very, very unique circumstances must be achieved. Really perfect, cymatic, formful expansions that are non-self-conflictory must happen in order to sustain life. And so when you see a sun star in the sky, you see essentially what is something that was born and created and is then sustained. And it is sustained by what humans recognize as complex chemical/molecular events. But just like your own body, you're like, I'm just sustained by a bunch of complex chemical and molecular events. And that's what it defines what I am. Like oxygen is utilized, water is utilized. Like, no. You're much more than that, right? You're much more than that. You have a soul, you have characteristics, you have sentience, you have personhood. Same thing with the sun and the stars. So they are not just big giant fusion reactors or dead stupid things that are very, very massive and heavy and are bending and warping time-space. They're not just spewing out lots of radiation and light and stuff. They're sentient, self-aware, highly evolved, in the process of evolving greater. And the sun's heliosphere, which again, is shaped exactly like this shape which surrounds you. So it's a fractal on a grand scale of you, protects the solar system. So it's your parent, it's your sky parent. And when I share this, I always give recognition to the sense that I know in human relationships and dynamics from being here about 20 years that many people find it challenging to integrate with their family. I could just be like, many people find things challenging with their family. You know, kind of being lighthearted again. I'm sure that you guys can all relate at times, but I also hope that there's some love and reciprocity in your relationships with your family. But families can be difficult, right? It's not always easy. So I recognize that if I say that the sun or the stars are like your parents, that some people might be like, no, don't go there. Because I know that you might have challenging relationships with your parents, your biological family, or human dynamics that are here. But think about the idealized parent. The idealized parent that creates life, loves its creation profoundly, is proud of its creation, sustains and nourishes its creation, and wants to see its creation come to the full fruition of its greatness. Idealized parent. So the heliosphere is the protective envelope that the sun emanates, that protects all of the sun's children, and that is the solar system. And you are very, very much a child of the sun and a child of the stars, and that your biological life that exists on one of the planets of the solar system. The sun is evolving, and this change in the sun and transformation and metamorphosis of the sun is affecting all of the planets that are here in the solar system. And I've talked to you that they are family members, spoken to you about this is what I should say. And lesson 18 really refers to this openly. The asteroid belt that's between Mars and Jupiter is a very, very sad, tragic thing that happened to one of your family members. One of your planets got turned into a bunch of rubble and is demolished, and that's its corpse floating around up there. It's actually a very, very sad, troubling story, and it relates to why do you have to flying rainbow lasagna get past these genetic impediments and reintegrate yourself into this network of solar and stellar consciousness that is actually the foundation of your being. You never should have been separated from it. Very, very sad and distressing stuff. But it's sad stuff that has happened not only to your whole entire solar system, sad stuff that's happened to your whole entire galaxy. Sad face. Aurora makes a sad face. Very, very distressing. But I say all this so that you know that, again, I didn't want to portray it entirely as the struggles, but I do want to recognize life ain't easy. Things that you're experiencing in your own personal development to ascend are analogous to and parallel to the challenges that the planet is facing in, let's say, becoming free, getting to freedom. Same thing with the challenges that the sun, your sun, is facing here. The entire network of stars is facing here in terms of galactic presence and how your galaxy integrates with all these other galaxies. Everybody's got the struggle. Everybody's trying to supersede limitations and rise higher. So you're not a small, inconsequential, stupid thing that drives to the store and buys coconut milk. You are actually a very, very valid microcosmic presence within a much, much larger alive presence that is moving towards freedom. And your challenges and your triumphs are absolutely an integral part of the triumph and decisive victory on a much, much larger scale. So now I want to talk to you about what the galactic center is. I'm just going to prepare my little drawing thing here. The galactic center. Wait, I need to drink some water. You can hear it in my voice. And I'll get to your questions. Galactic center as it relates to personality characteristics. Back to this drawing over here. So as I talked to you and I said, oh, prepare incoming rant, New Age shadow work, I felt like the teaching from 10 years ago and this basic truthfulness shared in total purity, because I'm very innocent, can easily be taken out of context. That's what it means to be cherry-picked, and then distorted and weaponized and used as a disempowerment tool to say to you, oh, New Age shadow work, you got to accept that all, here's flawed New Age shadow work that I don't want to actually reinforce in you, which is why I stopped myself. The flaw says, just the very fact that you are present in the material world creates an antithesis world of non-intelligence and darkness that you must then integrate and deal with and be like, oh, these scary dark things are really a part of me. That, I think, is dangerous thinking and not completely accurate. And the direction from which I shared 10 years ago is totally accurate and pure and true, but I didn't know the way that things would be interpreted, misinterpreted, or propagated through the consciousness field of human thought forms and possibly misinterpreted. That's not even much of a rant. I didn't even rant very much at all today. But what I was hoping, actually last night as I rewatched it this morning, I was like, this thing that I'm about to share with you, this is the thing that I would like to be propagated more widely. So let's start it right now. This whole process of being in this refinery of consciousness and moving from the periphery out here inward towards the central core timeline is a process of refinement of your soul and refinement of your personality characteristics, where you recognize that this stuff that's going on over here in the periphery is not the true definition of who you are. There's stuff there, definitely, exists within the definition and the boundaries of what you would define as your life, quote unquote. It's a bunch of possibilities. Possible stuff exists over here. Hey, here, there's possible stuff, but it's not truthful stuff. It's not truthful events. It's not truthful descriptions of self, and it is not truthful experiences or characteristics or behavioral expressions of who you are. Let me change to a different color to emphasize it. This white light is the correct recipe. This is who you really are. So the process of life and being alive for yourself, for everyone around you, for the planet, for the sun, the stars, and the entire stellar network is a process of choosing whom you are not. Get it? So flawed New Age shadow work says, everything is me. I'm everything, including the darkness and the scary monsters. No, you're actually not everything. You are actually in a process of refinement, which is this over here. And it's part of the basic shape of what you are as energy. As you circulate in these spiral patterns and you get more and more and more aligned with the central core timeline, you learn who you are not, or what you are not. What characteristics are the real you and what characteristics are not the real you. What are the things that are part of the recipe of you on an eternal level, the eternal definition of yourself, as opposed to things that are completely pathogenic, complete lies, projections, moderate distortions, mutations, illusions, or anything that's not the real you for any reason. This central core timeline, this white light, is the correct recipe of you, and it is what we would call and describe you as an ascended master. It is a very specific recipe, just like this recipe for cake, for white light, is a very specific recipe. And what if you mixed up the proportions of how much vanilla extract you were going to put in and how much flour you were going to put in? You would have 2 cups of vanilla extract versus 1/8 of a teaspoon of flour. Do you understand what a cake would be like? Wait, let me go back to my face. No, go back to my face, guys. Do you understand what a cake would taste like if you had 2 cups of vanilla extract versus 1/8 of a teaspoon of flour? That would taste disgusting. It would taste horrible. It would be very, very gross and not at all right. I don't know if you guys know cake recipes and stuff, but that would not be edible. It would be poisonous, or with salt. 2 cups of salt to 1/8 of a teaspoon of flour. That's called poison. You can't eat that. That's not food for the body. Very, very specific recipes go into the definition of self as you come into alignment with that central core timeline and the definition of what it is to be an ascended master. Non-random, non-arbitrary, and harmonically proportionate recipe of self to be able to be that definition of an ascended master. And when you are that definition, what happens is you're able to transcend the level of reality that you're exiting because you've made it through the refinement process. You're shaped the correct way. You are the lean, essential definition of who you are on an eternal level, and you only take with you, when you go through the stellar network, you go through the sun and the stars as a portal, and you only take with you the stuff that's the real you. So I joke about this, like, you don't bring any baggage, you have to travel light. I don't know if that's even a funny joke to you, but ha ha. Yeah, you have to just be your true self, and you can't take anything that's like emotional detritus, anything that is a behavioralism or an expression of who you are that comes simply out of unhealed trauma or emotional residues or bad stuff that happened to you. Because that's not who you really are. You really are the definition of beautiful, delicious cake. That is who you are, as defined by the divine presence of intelligence that is emanating you out of divine mind, your array of divine intelligence. And so this is not just ego convenience. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to make up a recipe. Like, you take this many units of courage and this many units of this and this many units of that and then this much creativity and throw it in together, and that's how you get a person. Like, that's not cake. You have to measure everything perfectly. It has to all be measured out perfectly and then harmonically integrate with everything. Ancestors, progeny, environment, larger organisms harmonically scaled up, and tiny subatomic particles. Non-arbitrary pattern of who you are as a person. You can't just define it and say, like, I'm this guy. You're like, no, you actually have to be the right person. That is the white light definition of who you are in order to transcend the process of refinement. You have to be selective. It's the opposite of how New Age shadow work has indoctrinated people. To be non-selective. To say, I'm everything. I want to be facetious and SpongeBob. I'm everything, including all the stuff that I'm not. No, you're not. Rant. No, there's a lot of stuff that you're not. Big part of the journey here is learning who or what you are not. And behaviorally in your life and in timelines, you might be faced with different opportunities to exert your free will and express and show who you really are and who you're really not. And this is the living cosmic law. You express it with your behavior. I don't want you guys to feel like very burdened by this, or like you're being constantly watched. Like Santa Claus knows if you're naughty and knows if you're nice and knows if you did you wash all the dishes? Did you coil up the electrical cord? Did you do everything? Like, kind of like someone is watching. Better do everything right, otherwise you won't be an ascended master. But you express who you are through your behavior. And sometimes you might be in a very, very difficult life situation. You live the truth of who you are. You express that truth of your true recipe in the way that you respond to your environment and the troubles of the perturbations, the wild gyrations of the people around you and the culture around you. Your response to all of this is largely the expression of, if not the definition of, your character in life. It doesn't justify or excuse a lot of suffering, because I think a lot of suffering is unnecessary. A lot of suffering is unnecessary and not didactic. But let's say there's a crisis. You know, like I use this example a lot. You're at a pool and there's like a little child kind of like walking along with their swim fins and they're teetering precipitously on the edge of the deep end, and you're looking around, you're like, there's no one else here, there's no lifeguard on duty, that kid's about to fall in, and you really make a choice or express something very deep in that moment. You're either going to be the person who goes over and gets that kid away from the danger and makes sure that they sit quietly and whatever, eat an ice cream cone until their parents arrive, or you watch the kid go into the deep end, flounder, and maybe die. All right? You make a choice about whether you act, about whether you intervene, about whether if you see something and if you're empowered to do something about it. And what if you're not empowered? What if you're like, but I can't swim, but I can't do that. I'm not officially a lifeguard. I haven't signed a disclosure agreement to do these things. I'm not qualified. I should definitely not do anything about the precipitous peril of that other organism over there. Or you could be like, you know something, throw that all out the window. If I don't do something, someone is going to get hurt. All right? Sometimes it's a crisis situation like that. Sometimes it's not a life crisis situation. Sometimes it's just something as simple as, like I said, coiling up the electrical cord. It's like no one's gonna die. It's just doing it in order to do things to leave it better for the next person who's gonna come along or whatever. Bust your dishes at the cafe, you know. She's like, don't just leave your dirty dishes behind. Like, pick those up and put them where they help somebody out. Put away your shopping cart at the end of your shopping adventure in the parking lot. Let's just put you guys might, in your country, you might call it your shopping trolley. Put your trolley in the right spot. Help somebody out in their life. These are defining characteristics behaviorally, but I don't want you to think that it's like some kind of a constant test, like someone is waiting there with their clipboard and they're watching you through your life. Like, do not put shopping trolley in correct area, 10 points off. 10 points off Gryffindor. You know, some larger, whatever, silly gamification. It's not a gamification. There is no way to hack or gamify this experience of reality, because the truth is you have the backbone to stand up that you earn through these experiences, whether someone's looking or not. You do it because you do it, not because you're going to get points, or because you're going to get sent to hell, or because Santa Claus is watching, or because mommy, daddy, Jesus, the government, or any outside external authority figure is going to either punish or reward you. You do it just because you do it. That's it. That is it. That is what it is to be an ascended master. And there's first of all no preset set of behaviors. Always do this, never do this. You must follow your heart. You must follow your own inner directive, which is connection to the divine, which doesn't just happen here. Imagine I'm pointing to the nuclei of every cell of my body, pointing to my nuclei. Connect to your divine connection, and it will tell you in every moment what you need to be doing. Because some guy's going to be watching kids at the pool. Some other person is going to be in a different life situation. These are not 100% one size fits all. This is not one size fits all architecture for every life. Your life is as unique as your fingerprint. It is as unique as your DNA code. So the things that are right and wrong behaviorally for you, the things you should and shouldn't do, mommy, daddy, what do I do? The answer is you have to listen to your own divine connection, because the answer is unique to each journey. And so big takeaway. Don't follow flawed shadow work that tells you that you must embrace and internalize and identify with that which is aberrant. Aberrant means that SHIT shouldn't even exist. That stuff shouldn't even be there. And a lot of people that I talk with who are on their journey, they're like, yeah, we don't even know how that stuff can exist. Like, I talk with them all about these very incredibly abstract aspects. And because, you know, if I follow DNA through my inner eye, through my inner seeing, all the way back to what is known as the planetary invasion, it's like that can actually technically can't happen. But somehow this is the experience. I don't even want to say somehow it happened, but like that shouldn't even have to happen. There's so many fail-safes that failed, so many protections from divine intelligence in the formation of the cosmos and the infrastructure of what it is to be alive that somehow didn't get followed, so many cosmic laws that got broken. So I become exasperated with the seeming impossibility of the situation, and yet somehow that is what's going on. That's what's going on. At a certain point you have to get, because I'm very intellectual, I'm like, but wait, my clipboard states that this cannot be happening, but like this is what's happening. And that was actually me for the first couple of years here of being a walk-in. I'm like, technically that can't be happening, and technically that's not allowed, and technically that, and technically that and that. I made this face a lot, you know, like that technically that doesn't make sense. And then at a certain point I just had to be, oh, okay, like I moved into acceptance and practicality. Like, okay, even though that stuff is not supposed to exist, I have to respond to it. This is what's going on. I've talked with many people who are similarly on a spiritual path, perceptive and mystified at the seeming impossibility of the things that are happening here, but at a certain point maybe you don't even have the luxury to be like, well, my clipboard states. You're like, look, there's bad stuff that's happening and you're gonna have to respond to it, or in spite of what your clipboard says, and the analysis and computations of what you know is supposed to be happening in the world, and you simply respond to it, which is also like part of the recipe of what it is to be alive. When you, in order to stay alive, sometimes you have to recognize like, oh, this is an unjust situation, or this is seemingly an impossible possibility, and yet this is going on. What do? What do I do? I got to do something, including here's the unjustness and the seeming impossible possibility, being cut off from the divine. What do you do when your inner guidance is down? What do you do when the inner compass doesn't give you a reading of what to do? So the answer is you always have to find a way to navigate using a higher sense. You'll always have to find a way to augment or reach beyond any seeming impossibility or disempowerment and get to be empowered anyway. That's Flying Rainbow Lasagna. All right? This is me as a higher dimensional perspective being like, hey, something that's happening down there is not supposed to be happening. That technically is not possible. That's unjust. Oh, if that goes unaddressed, this is bad stuff that's going to happen here. What am I supposed to do? There's no good options on the menu. I'm going to have to create a new option. Flying Rainbow Lasagna created a new option. And when I teach this and use this as a template to other people in your lives, you can use this specifically in your life, but you can also use this as an analogy. You're like, wow, like when something isn't making sense and seems to be impossible, but if I sense impending doom and I know I have to do something, but there's no good options, what do you have to do? The idea of Flying Rainbow Lasagna is to innovate and to augment and to create a way, make a pathway, make it happen. Because to stand idly by and allow a child to fall into the deep end or allow a planet to be consumed or destroyed or destabilized, or allow a star system to be harmed, or allow a galaxy to be destabilized, that is not, simply put, not an option. All right? So you must sometimes create an augmentation. And if you're like, I say this in my Flying Rainbow Lasagna manifesto, I laugh at myself. My manifesto, the cosmos augments itself by necessity. And sometimes that happens through your personal difficulties and the challenging limitations. Like you find your back up against the wall and the cosmos is like, okay, you're going to have to do something just as an individuated organism. And what you do as an individuated organism has a profound impact on the capacitation of the rest of the organism that you're connected to, because what one can do, anyone can do. It becomes open source code. So if one person can Flying Rainbow Lasagna, everybody can Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And that becomes a part of the new tier of rules, or the new sectionality or addendum of rules of the cosmos of what is possible. You write a new rule for what is possible, and you do that with your presence, your living presence in the world. So now I have to talk to you. So you blah, 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 blah. New Age shadow work. Don't just accept and identify with everything that is actually the pitfall, the ego pitfall of the awakening Christ pineal gland indigo chakra is over-identification with that which is around you. It's one of the pitfalls. You're like, that's me. That's me. That's me. It's all me. No. That was a very funny notification that came in just as I said no. No, it's not all you. You're not pathogenic. The pathogenic crapola is not you. And it's really essential to make that distinction, because as you make that distinction, your chakras go from out of alignment into alignment. And that, I'm going back to my share screen here, that is what brings you to that central core timeline, right? Making that distinction of what you are not brings you to the focus of this timeline here. So now we have to talk about all of these beautiful, amazing stars, stellar presences that are all around. So here's a star, these dots. I don't know if you can see them. Wait. I want to do a better color. I am going to erase them all and start again. I heard somebody's mind. They're just not going to erase them all and start again. I'm like, yes, I am. There's a star, there's a star, there's a star. These little red dots are meant to be stars all throughout the night sky. And in Path of Light, what I teach about is how the singularity at the center of all of these stars, there's actually no space. Like where I'm making a red line, there's actually no space there. They actually all overlap into one giant thing that is the star that emits the photon, and that has singularity inside of it, and you are that as well. Please, I just love sharing Path of Light stuff. Really encourage and invite you to be a part of my class. Each one of these stars is a tiny little point of consciousness. Now we're going to draw a galactic center. This is a big, giant, heavy bowling ball that is known as a supermassive black hole. These are arms of a spiral galaxy. Each one of these arms is comprised of an almost uncountable number of little dots that are all stars. And if you want to know like your star, you're like all the way out here. You're very far from the galactic center. And in order for all of these stars to talk and communicate as a type of brain or neurological network, it's essential to recognize that they speak through a higher dimension. They don't just go in a linear sense. Like, let's just grab a color and say the linear sense. Wait, you're not going to be able to see that. Moving from point A to point B. Like, that's a very long distance. That will take you like billions of years if you flew at the speed of light to get from point A to point B. And by the time you can't have a conversation because the time lag becomes an irrelevancy. In order for this entirety, the galaxy, to act as a holistic presence, it must communicate in a higher dimensional format, skipping the linear journey of point A to point B, bending and folding the fabric of space, time, and consciousness so that point A and point B meet, like my fingertips meet my hand, and there's no space. So that green line that I just drew becomes collapsed into no space. There's no space. There's a portal there, and the light goes through there, and then the light goes directly to there. There is no space. So what you actually have is a very complex, convoluted, folded space. Let's see if I can even get a color to do this. You have a folded space, like a ruffle there with these two edges that come together. And if I use my, I don't know if is my magician's assistant ready over here, because the problem is I have a lot of things on my work table over here. Usually I'm able to just grab my scarf and be like, wait, my lovely magician's assistant will bring my magical rainbow scarf. But I've got this, this, and this that are all delicate sculptures that I have to move. Oh, my lovely assistant pulls the rainbow scarf after a moment's pause out of her hands and says, this is the fabric of space, time, and consciousness, and here's point A, one star, and here's point B, another star. And in order to have them communicate in real time, what you have to do is have this intervening space that has to collapse into no space. There's no space. Now point A and point B touch. And so what you end up having is this extremely gathered or ruffled or convoluted surface or topology of what the fabric of reality is shaped like. Maybe it might be shaped like, one of those ruffled collars that you might have seen like in history books. Not a simple, flat time space. And also every time I draw this, I draw it like it's a flat plane, but it's actually a sphere. So all of these ruffles and convolutions exist within a spherical presence, not a flat plane. Okay. The stars, as they exist, are characteristic expressions that are fractals of the primary personality characteristic that is the central black hole at the center of our galaxy. And I have to get into what black holes are, and then I have to check out your questions in the chat. Black holes are what happen at the end of a star's, not lifespan, but the chapter of a star's life when it is emitting. For a large portion of the star's life, it's sending stuff out and sending stuff out and sending stuff out, sends out timelines and possibilities and nourishment. But at a certain point, it doesn't send out anymore. This is in the realm of mortality. And when that happens, the huge gravitational forces of the plasma being crush inward from every direction. And that is what a black hole is. That is what science's description and the mathematical way of perceiving describes is happening to this fabric of space, time, and consciousness, the endless inward crushingness that is called singularity, a place where the rules of physics break down because you don't have a physical world anymore. You don't have the physical world anymore. So this is analogous to a human mortal experience where right now you're in the physical world. You live according to certain rules. If you want to stay alive, you have to drink coconut milk and other stuff. Food goes in here. And then do stuff. And your body has to do stuff. And it's being part of the symphony of life. And beyond your metabolic processes, you also must conform to patterns of time. If you go in this direction, you're going to die. If you go in this direction, you're going to stay alive. That is very normal stuff. So you must conform to certain metabolic, biological patterns and trajectories in time in order to stay alive. And even stars in this realm of mortality, where death is a possibility, can reach the conclusion of their self-expression experiment in physicality structure, and then no longer have a physicality structure, and then be a non-physicality structure. And that's what it is to be a black hole. Black holes are called black holes not because they don't contain light, but because they do contain light. They contain so much light that light doesn't escape. Light stays inside of them. That's big stuff. So right now what you see are portals through which light emits, optical light, and gets to you. You're like, there's a thing there, I can see it. But black holes exist because they have light coming into them. And light does not come out of them. And you don't see them. And so humans call them black. And they also think death is the end. And if you're a person who's an objective materialist and you only look at what the physicality form does, and if there is a physicality form but nothing animating it, no energy presence, then you're like, yep, dun, 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 you're dead. But this is not the end. So death has never been the end. It is part of the continuum of consciousness. And also death is not inevitable. That's one of those things that I'm like, well, technically, according to my clipboard, shouldn't even be dying. But obviously, there's a lot of death here that is happening. I'm going to have to deal with it and just stop quibbling or negotiating about the existence of death. Because at a certain point, I had to be like, okay, like just admit that death is happening here. I'm like, that shouldn't be happening. But it is. So you got to do something in response to this. The evolutionary process of a star is when it stops sending light out and instead starts to draw light back into it. And when it does that, the rules, the area where that happens in the black hole, known as singularity, according to Earth's description of this experience, doesn't follow the rules of physics anymore, because the rules of physics are the observable world according to your five senses. Something else is happening in that level of reality. And it's in a lot of, if you access the current academic thought structures on this, they'll say like, it's unknowable. It's unknowable what's happening in there. Like, is there data in there? I don't know, because no data or intelligence or light escapes a black hole. Shrug your shoulders. I don't know what's happening in a black hole. There's no knowing, but there is knowing, and the type of knowing that happens is the type of knowing that happens if you put your tendril of attention. You always use this to be consistent. My tendril of attention reaches out and touches on a black hole. Don't worry, your tendril of attention won't get sucked into a black hole. You won't get stuck in there or anything like that. It's how you learn about things for real, not through complex mathematical computations or through making a satellite or telescope or sending a probe into a black hole and be like, we sent this thing into the black hole and we tried to see what happened at the other side. That's not how you really learn about a black hole. You touch on it, you attenuate to it. And as I told you, in order to have true communication, you must use the magical rainbow scarf and have the folding of fabric of time, space, and consciousness. You have the black hole that is the center of the galaxy inside of you. Have it inside of you. There's actually no space between you and that black hole. You don't have to reach out millions or billions or an uncountable number of miles to reach that place. It is inside of you. And it is part of what you connect to in order to get your divine guidance as to whether you should intervene and stop that kid from falling in the deep end, or whether you should coil up that electrical cord, or what you should do in your life. That I call that galactic supermassive black hole at the center of our cosmos, the conductor. Tap, tap, tap. In the orchestra of life, orchestrating the processes and emissions and experiences of stars on a grand scale. This is big, big, big stuff, because if you think of it as a computer or a supercomputer, even though it's far beyond any human created technology, stellar network and the processes that are happening in reality generation and sustenance are so complex. It's like random access memory. What is the processing power of your computer? How many permutations can it make in a second or in a nanosecond, right? How many things can it do? And the answer is you have to do a lot of stuff really, really fast to orchestrate all of the metabolic processes of all of these almost uncountable numbers of stars in one galaxy. And you don't just have one galaxy, you have an almost uncountable number of galaxies. It's a huge amount of processing power. So it is a galactic living biological consciousness-based supercomputer. It requires an enormous amount of processing power to be able to generate and sustain reality, and then to be a supermassive black hole at the center of one of these groups, like a symphony that is being orchestrated, requires an enormous amount of talent and virtue. I call it being a virtuous virtuoso. So when you watch a human orchestra, there are the individual musicians, and the individual musicians each know their own part. So the flutes know their flute melody, and the percussionists know their melody. Hold on, you're going to hear beeping because I'm going to start my treadmill again. But your flutes know their melody. Percussionists know their patterns. Your electric guitar knows their music, right? And everybody knows their part. But the guy with the baton, or girl, or person with the baton, that is in the center of the orchestra, they know every part. They know the flutes, they know the percussion, they know the electric guitar, they know everything. They've memorized the score. They've memorized the patterns that are supposed to be expressed. They've got it all inside of them. They're the neurological hub that ties together all of these individuated musicians. The supermassive black hole at the center of a galaxy is the conductor that contains enough memory and processing power to be able to orchestrate and know the music of every single one of the beautiful, incredible musicians known as a star, creating their reality structures. So that includes your sun star, that is Sol of the solar system, making stuff happen here in your world, but also all of the other stars that also have similar, sometimes gaseous, sometimes material, planetary, rocky bodies, sometimes pure energy fields around them that are expressions, children of the stars, that sometimes contain biological life, but sometimes contain a different form of life. Many, many, many different types of life exist that are songs that are being played in the symphony of life by these amazing musicians that are the stars. And then the stars are all orchestrated by tap, tap, tap the conductor. And the conductor tells consciousness like when to become incarnated or born. Wait, 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 go, time to be born. And it tells you whether to play louder or softer, like louder, sometimes softer, less, sometimes stop playing, wrong note. And that's an incredible position, virtuous virtuosos, because we're talking about orchestrating life. Life doesn't happen accidentally. It happens through huge levels of unlikely, positive, orchestrated events. And it is sustained, again, through levels of unlikelihood. Like, you have to work hard to keep all of this stuff going. It doesn't happen by accident. And it is often imperiled that something could destabilize it and make it no longer be here. So you gotta keep the music going. You gotta keep your instruments in tune. You have to keep your players synchronized, literally synchronized in time, so that all of their emanations and lives mesh together harmonically, and so that these, I would say time cycles, but I know someone's going to be like, no, the karmic washing machine, I'm trauma. No, but not the karmic washing machine hamster wheel cycles, but positive cycles, in the sense of expressions and renewals and an endless song that never really ends, but definitely has culminations and then expansions and continued new patterning, keeping these cycles going. Big takeaway from all of those words. Doesn't happen by accident. Takes a lot of effort to keep all of this stuff going. Takes a lot of concerted effort and harmonic integration of various different types of personality characteristics, all of which are carved or sculpted into their divine greatest potential. And that's what the process is of becoming an ascended master, and that's what the sun and the stars are in the process of. What are the right notes? What are the wrong notes? Who are you really? Who are you not really? What are the reality structures that you're really making? What are the reality structures that you're not really making? What are the thought structures that bring you towards life and longevity and coherence? What are the thought structures that do not bring you towards life, longevity, and coherence? And there's a lot of stuff that is not thought structure from the stars in your world right now. I call that the poop crapola. That stuff does not come from the sun, which is why I have to tell you, don't do New Age shadow work and say, all light everywhere comes from the sun. It's all me. No, not all you. It's not all you. I used my dog voice for when I correct the dogs in my house. Sorry about that. No, it's not all you. Some of it is most certainly not you. And the process of achieving eternal life in your own body, becoming a coherent white light recipe of who you are that will continue onward endlessly, and the sun and the stars, the entire stellar network, and the galaxy doing the same level of self-cultivation involves making choices of discernment about whom you really are, whom you really are not, or what you really are not. So yeah, there's a lot of errant poop crapola waves. That's who you're not. It's in your face. It's in your face in this world very much. I didn't mean to say it's in your face, like painted upon your face. I meant to say that it was like basketball players. They're like, you're all in my face. Standing between you, largely, and your divine connection. Flying rainbow lasagna. Past those things that are in your face and towards the things that are the fellow musicians that are virtuous virtuosos playing the song of true life and sustenance in this world. That you go past those things that are distorted, mutilated, or pathogenic, and you connect and reconnect and sustain the music of eternal life with that which is correct, harmonically integrated, doing its math homework correctly, and playing these songs of eternal life. That's like, I think I got to everything in my notes, even though I pull up my notes and I then always ignore my notes. Let me scroll through and make sure that I got to all the important stuff, because yes, did galactic superwaves. So galactic superwaves, that's part of Tap Tap Tap, the great conductor. Stars as living beings that have a conception, a lifespan, and a death or evolution in the stages of their experience, and that they're going through the process of accrual of wisdom. And every time that I do this in Path of Light, so the reality is emanated in a particular pattern by a star, and the star gets the, oh, I didn't get to that part, reassessment. So everything you have is borrowed from the sun, and I say that or stars, very, very intentionally borrowed. You have all of these resources that you have for a brief amount of time. You're going to give it back. You have to give it back. Sometimes it is given back all at once at the moment of death. Like, I didn't hear from you for 40 years, and now I hear from you, and I'm like, oh, that's what happened, and you died. That's kind of what the relationship is like in the common mortal event of how most people die. It's not the same as having a conscious life and a conscious death. If you live consciously, you're always live streaming to the sun and the stars through your meditation, your mindfulness, and your presence, and your lasagna-ing of being able to say to the stars in real time, this is who I am, this is what I'm experiencing. Thank you for all of the light that is flowing through me. You know, I ate breakfast this morning, it contained glucose, that's light, it's flowing through my bloodstream right now, it's informing my life, it's giving me kinetic energy so I can stand here and do stuff. And I'm also broadcasting this as a neurological and cognitive and genetic event back to the sun and the stars. And I talk about that a lot in Path of Light as well. The sense that you're meant to be in a real-time rapport with the sun and the stars, and that there's constant fine-tuning and correction that happens, especially from your nearest broadcaster of divine intelligence, the sun. The sun is like, oh, like that's what's going on. Let me change my emanations and make things emanate differently and better so that you stay alive. Again, the idealized parent, not an inattentive parent, not a parent that has abandoned you, even though I know that many people feel very abandoned by either God or some protective higher dimensional entity. You're not abandoned. But there have been definite connectivity issues, and in those connectivity issues, you've had to go through a real refinement process of who you are. Who are you when the lights go out? Who are you when you don't have cell phone connection? Who are you when you're in one of these difficult situations and you're like call the police? Okay, like no police. Call the fire brigade, no fire brigade. Call a lifeguard, no lifeguard, or no whatever, ambulance services. What are you gonna do? It's just you. Then you have to make a choice, and the choice is a character sculpting moment of what you're gonna do. Everybody on this planet is in that moment of choice right now, all right? Because there are a lot of profound injustices, many things that have been trying to create false stories to go inside of you, false reality stories, stories about destruction and cataclysm and end of the biosphere and massive destruction of the planet. And it's absolutely up to you to work together with others. You don't have to wear the entire burden on your own shoulders, but work together as a collective to envision and manifest something better, even though poop crapola waves try to bring you into levels of profound disempowerment, because what they do is they tell you disempowerment stories. They tell you stories that are like, you're nothing, you're gonna die. I'm not agreeing with this, but I'm in a lighthearted way acting this out for you. And they tell you you're gonna get diseases, and they tell you you can't actually manifest reality. They tell you technology is stronger. They tell you boogeymen are stronger. They tell you basically all of these things that don't even exist are somehow stronger than you. So it's a huge character defining moment for you as a soul to be here and to be like, I know that's not true. I know that I am more powerful. I know that divine connection and divine presence is more powerful. I know that life is more powerful than these things that are trying to essentially destabilize the fabric of time, destabilize DNA everywhere. It's not just the death of one planet. Like, they are really trying to, because preventing planetary ascension and the things that they've done to distort DNA, and your DNA is connected to everything. I know I'm a little fragmented in that whole conversation. I hope that you got my telepathic download. Connected to everything. The problems you're having in your own individual life don't just affect you, they affect your community, and the problems you're having in your planet don't just affect one planet, they affect your entire connectivity to all time everywhere, all timelines and parallel dimensions, and all of your concurrent lives are all connected in your present level of struggle or imperilment. And it's fair to say that because it validates the heroicism of coming forward in this moment. If I use this nice words of like, it's a spiritual unfoldment, nothing bad is happening, la la la, then it also really kind of pisses and poops all over your real courageousness. When you're like, no, actually we're totally imperiled, bad stuff is happening, and you have to recognize it, wake up to that, and actually roll up your sleeves and do something. Genuine heroic stuff is happening here. And the genuine heroicism happens within a genuine sense of dire circumstance, not to miscontextualize it. And when you recognize that valid context, then your activities and response get the recognition that they deserve. It's a very, very difficult situation. And couching my language actually diminishes and disrespects the heroicism and amazing personal response that so many of you are expressing in this time. That is when you say, I choose not to believe in these larger narratives. I choose to believe in a narrative of self-empowerment. You emanate a different story that is actually you in the moment of coming into your divinity. When you feel cut off from the larger divine structure, And there's all these stories that are not truthful stories, that are about how you're going to die, or everything is going to get destroyed, or there's nothing you can do. Like, scream all you want, there's nothing you can do. This is like a horror movie, and I'm joking about that. It's essential to become God, to become your divinity, and say, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure it out. No, I don't know how to do it exactly, but somehow I'm going to do it. Do the impossible. Rise to the occasion, I think, is the phrase that I would use. Rise to the occasion and find your empowerment to be able to write a better narrative, and that is also everything that Flying Rainbow Lasagna is about. So my narrative is seeing the teetering peril of a car about to go over the edge of a cliff in the higher dimensional perspective of this planet, and loss of a person, but also loss of an entire planetary structure if I didn't intervene. Intervening, but then also through that intervention, teaching other people about their own empowerment and their own capacitation to intervene. My great joy, my job joy in life, is teaching you about Flying Rainbow Lasagna as a way of restructuring reality and affecting reality in positive divine patterns through restructuring the behavior and expression of your own DNA. Your own DNA, it's your own architecture. You're allowed to do this. And when you start to, I'm putting down my crystals here, when you start to dance in these new patterns, you create a new story. And I love that you're doing that, because I should not be the only songwriter in the band. I write songs, and in my song, I write the song that says, all these other guys become songwriters too. Oh, and now they're all songwriters. And that is a powerful system, because if there's only one person writing songs, which is again the ancient hierarchical model of one king or one rock star or one whatever special epicentric individual, then everybody else is chopped liver. And then if that person has a bad day or whatever, the flu, they're under the weather, then reality tumbles because no one's writing new songs. Of reality, you have billions of stars in the sky, and they're all writing songs. And every single one of you, spoiler alert, become the sun and the stars. And you write these stories of reality that are the stories of transcendence, and I keep using that word, empowerment, but let's say overcoming the things that have tried to hold you back. And all the things that tried to hold you back, those are all the things that shouldn't actually exist. My clipboard says they don't even exist. Theoretically, they can't be holding you back. And one of the final lies that those things that don't exist will tell you is they're like, we're your teachers and we're teaching you to be better. No, I talk to them like a dog. No, they do not teach you to be better. They are not necessary, and they are not didactic. They're pathogenic. They're actually trying to destroy everything. And against all odds, you are making sure that stuff doesn't get destroyed. So my recognition flows to you, and no recognition flows to them. They actually should not be in existence. They should not, and they shall not be in existence. Let me get to questions and comments. Pedro, and thank you for being here, as a beautiful long-term student, says, are your miniature models ready? Which miniature models are you talking about? Because I've been working on all sorts of things. Like I've been working on I'm calling these my golden donuts. So I hope you can see this is a donut-shaped organite, and then I've wrapped it with gold-plated copper wire. So these are energy amplifiers that I'm using for my Iba crystals. And I am intending to make these like available for other people. Like when I hold this like this, it pulses like wah, wah, wah. Very, very powerful, amazing stuff. But I'm not sure if you were thinking about that or if it was about 3D models, because I had an order from someone who wanted to have little lasagna earrings, and I did put through an order for that. But my 3D print service has gotten so expensive. This is on a totally mundane level. But like they raised up their prices so much, it's become just a little bit prohibitive for me to get them to print my earrings. So it's really just by special request. It's on the menu, but those are lasagnas that are only by special request. Okay, so Pedro goes on to say, we have 5 senses in the 3D world. Are there more senses in higher dimensions? Yes, you have what would be considered a sphere of senses around you. Instead of 360, which would be just one diameter in circumference, you have an entire sphere of senses around you. And you might interpret them through your preconceptions based upon biological architecture as being visual or auditory or tactile. But these senses technically reside in a place that is beyond the five senses, that is beyond the biological architecture. And it's just you're interpreting it through your biological filter as something that you see or hear. And even clairsentience, which is pure knowingness, comes through the preconception of having a brain or having a brain-shaped neurology. So these senses are beyond your physical senses, and they're your light body senses, but they have their own truthfulness in exactly the same way that your five senses of your physical body have their own truthfulness. But of course, if you had a different type of body, your senses would be different. My dog's sense of smell is far better than me as a human. She literally smells people, like 5 blocks away, and she's like, we need to go in this direction. I'm like, why are we going in this direction? And then we go turn a corner, and it's like, there is a person, best friend. Cheeky needed to say hi to this person, and she could sniff them all the way away up there. So she's sometimes looking at me like, you human, minimally sniffing human, you can't even sniff that person over there. So yeah, the primacy of their biological senses to be able to smell things and interpret information in that way. So really, when the senses of the higher dimension are really raw data senses, they're the senses of interpreting, because what you do is you feel and sense everything all at once. They're not linear senses. So right now, in order to make sense of the world, in order to comprehend the world, you hear one note of the song at a time. Here's a note. Here's another note. Here's another note. But if I played every single note of the song all at the same time, okay, it didn't really come out the way I wanted it to, but you'd hear like mishmash. You'd be like, that is not music, that's all the notes at once. But that is what the senses of the higher senses are like. You sense everything all at once. So if you were to sense a person, you'd sense their presence, their entire life presence, from conception through every possible life trajectory to completion. If you sensed an event or a nourishment, it would be every single aspect of the recipe of that stuff all at once. Everything is all at once. Stuff is not linear. Stuff is not perceived first this, then this, then this. It is a different type of sense that is immediate and perceives time differently. So not based in the experience of linear time, which is Pac-Man chomping one moment per moment. It's a beautiful question. Thank you. So Charlie B says, great point. New Age shadow work that suggests you must identify yourself as diseases, quote unquote, and addictions makes no sense. Rather, a parasite would love for you to identify yourself as that parasite. A parasite wants to identify yourself as the disease itself. Very, very good insight there, Charlie B, and thank you for being in the class. It's what parasites do. Parasites and pathogenics in the body of the physicality structure, they wear disguises, and they stand around like this. They're like, I'm a part of you. Like, I look just like you. Don't use your immune system against me. Don't get me out of you. They're not anything like you. They don't belong there at all. They weren't always there. They don't contribute to the totality of the sustenance of who you are. They're just standing around at the party being like, I'm fitting in. I'm fitting in. I'm just like everybody else. They're not like everybody else. They don't fit. And so at a certain point, your immune system is like, takes off the mask. It's like, wait a minute. You're actually a horrible monster. You don't belong here. Get out, get out. Take out the trash. If your immune system is healthy. It's necessary to do that with all sorts of assertions, information, characteristics in DNA. And I'm going to say this again. I said this in last week's class. It's revolutionary information. Your DNA is an antenna. If you imagine this crystal wand is an antenna, like the microscopic molecular structure of your DNA. And your DNA is surrounded by a sheath of structured water, in its linear format, vibrating inside the chromatin of your body. It's inside of a sheath of structured water, and it receives information and intelligence behaviorally from the movements of that water. And then that water is also structured and informed by the DNA as an antenna that's connected to the galactic supermassive black hole. The supermassive black hole communicates to you through your genetic antenna. It's not very good if there's all sorts of subcutaneous pollutions that harm people's genetic antenna. And let's say you're like, no subcutaneous pollutions for me. I chose not to do that. I'm like, yeah, me neither. But you know what? These people are like emitting the poop crapola that comes from millimeter waves and other things through their genetic antennae, which is what they get attuned to and entrained to. And then you're like, stop pooping inside of me. Get this, poops out. That's not supposed to be inside of me. So it's really essential to take out the trash, not only in the sense of microbes in your body. You know, I talk about what happens at night when you sleep and your body goes through its cleansing processes, especially if you do like autophagy or intermittent fasting. Your body will be like, oh, that doesn't belong there. You don't belong here. Get out. You're not supposed to be at this party. And sometimes it's dead cells, sometimes it's invader cells, sometimes it's fragments, whatever. Get the stuff out. You need to defragment your mind, the idea structures that come into you, as much as pathogenic one-celled organisms. And idea structures, where do they come from? The news. The news is pooping inside of your mind. It's like, that's not truthful stuff. It's not even just harmless illusionary stuff. It's malevolently, manipulatively, intentionally wrong stuff. And that's called propaganda also. Being a big troublemaker by saying that. Many sources of disinformation and misinformation that exist in this world intentionally to disempower you. The whole disempowerment story is a bunch of garbage that needs to be cleaned out of the waters that surround your DNA and cleaned out of your cognitive processes and perceptions. And some of these disempowerment stories even come through the spiritual community. That's why it's very challenging that they get infected in there. Like I'll tell someone, I had a conversation with someone, and I said, yeah, no, don't get involved into Tartaria and mud floods. It's another psyop. They're like, why are you calling my hobby a psyop? And I'm like, okay, look, because it's another one of these suddenly emerging narratives that has at its core, at the root of what it is, a disempowerment agenda. Because it basically grooms you for the expectation that you're just going to get another mind wipe and you're just going to get another amnesia. So rant against Tartaria and mud floods. Amnesia is one of the primary traumas that you experience or experienced from the fall. He didn't fall, he was pushed from Atlantis. Can't quite remember what happened with that. And that is something that makes you think that you're going to have that experience again and again. Like, oh no, you know something, they mind wiped me once and now they're going to try to do it again. More disempowerment, more self-forgetfulness instead of God's self-remembrance and empowerment and reconnection. So that's where stories like Tartaria resonate through the traumas that you've experienced as a race, as a species. And then you think, oh, inevitable experiencing of trauma. But what I teach is no, you already went down that road. You already experienced that enough. You don't need to be traumatized again. You didn't need to be traumatized once. It's not necessary or didactic for you to be able to learn and grow on a soul's level. What you need to do is remember your empowerment, which is your capacity to create reality directly. Poop millimeter waves tell you you can't create reality directly. Something else is in charge and something else is going to poop all over you. But the truth of the water that surrounds your DNA when you're connected to the galactic center says, listen to the great conductor, you're empowered. Do something. You get to do something with your mind. You get to imagine something with your mind. I've used this example in class also. That it's not a very good movie, so don't go and see it. But that movie about the Green Lantern where this guy is a magical superhero, he gets a magical ring. And he has this magical ring where he's like, with this ring, I can imagine anything. And he gets into a tough spot and he imagines like a car. So I'm going to get into this car and drive away from the thing that's bad. I'm like, that's not very imaginative of things. If you can imagine literally anything with your magic ring, you could imagine anything. If you had a magical lasagna that you could use to rearrange your DNA and restructure reality and make amazing things happen, what can you do? You can imagine a much better response than just escapism. Imagine a car, a piece of technology, something that will help you to escape. You could imagine a resolution to the circumstance. You could imagine a resolution to the entirety of all human suffering that has ever existed. That is what tap, 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 the great conductor, really wants you to be imagining. And that these levels of imagination, or innovation is a good word. You do a thought innovation. It's like, no one's ever thought of that before. I'm going to think of that. I just thought of that, and I'm going to do that. And that's going to be the story that I'm going to emanate outward with my empowerment. That becomes revolutionary. It's everything that the poop millimeter waves don't want people to experience. And the internalization of pathogen as self, there's a lot of self-hatred there. Because it's like saying you're the poop. I'm like, you're not the poop. You're the good stuff, and the poop is the poop, and get it away from you. Because that's the deep, dark stuff. And so here's the false story. Here's how you blow past. So, okay, I do these clearings all the time, and I do them with my crystals on an energy level, and I do them intellectually. The clearing on an intellectual level says that you are not the thing that is the negative stuff that is here, that you didn't emanate. So the false assertions say, like, it came out of your mind, you emanated it somehow, you're in the generative force field, and it came out of you. It didn't come out of you. It shouldn't technically even be here. It doesn't exist. It didn't come out of you. It says it's your teacher. It's not your teacher. It says it's necessary for your growth. It's not necessary for your growth. And all of these things, you get down the list and you're like, well, wait a minute. Here's this thing that doesn't exist, isn't helping me. I'm not technically responsible for it. Because when you emanate something, you're like, well, okay, I made that thing happen. I'm responsible for it. But this false shadow work has got you owning stuff that's not your stuff. You own your stuff. When you make a mistake, you really make a mistake. Or when you don't coil up the electrical cord, you didn't coil up the electrical cord. You own it. But don't own stuff that's not your stuff. That's not your stuff. But also, if there's something that's not your stuff, you can still respond to it without owning it. And that's what I do as a walk-in. I'm like, dirty socks. They're not my dirty socks. I didn't do that, but there's clearly dirty socks. Pick them up, stick them in the laundry. That's what you do. I clear out these false assertions that are in the human genetic code and that are in people's cell membranes and their fascia. Clear them out all the time. I literally do that while I'm grooving to music and walking along on my treadmill. I'm like, clearing out lies, clearing out lies, clearing out lies, clearing out lies. I didn't emanate these lies. I didn't make that poop. It's not there from me. And when I say it didn't come from my butt, but I'm cleaning it up because that is what I do as a responsible galactic citizen. But it's tiring, and so then at a certain point what you want to be is like, okay, like who's pooping out all this stuff? Where's all this coming from? Maybe there's a more effective way to be able to stop that. But when people falsely identify with the pathogenic aspects that are being forcefully placed inside of them, and the lies and the disempowerment narratives that are being forcefully placed inside of them, then that is the struggle. And so one of the lies that I clear out, because the poop says, I'll stop bothering you as long as you identify with me. Hug me. Imagine like a big giant poop that's like running after you and being like, hug me, hug me. It's like, no, don't hug it. That's the whole thing, is when you hug it, then it's kind of like you get all smeared up and become it. It's just becoming a very gross metaphor. But anyway, it says, I'll stop torturing you if you hug me. Kumbaya with poop, kumbaya. Don't kumbaya with poop. Because first of all, that's a degradation of yourself. It's agreeing to lies. Don't agree to lies, even under torture. And second of all, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. The poop doesn't stop being poop, and it doesn't stop torturing you just because you agree to its parameters. And once you agree to its parameters, the whole power dynamic has shifted into you now appease the poop. And you walk around being like, poop, can I do this for you? Can I do this for you? Will you stop torturing me if I do this? Will you stop torturing me if I do this? Totally erroneous power dynamic. That would be like if I was a nanny, like 20 years ago when I first came here. If I was a nanny and I said to the kids, like, am I allowed to put you to bed? Am I allowed to have you brush your teeth? Am I allowed to have you pick up your room and put away your toys? That would be a totally wrong power dynamic. You'd be like, Aurora, like, this is not how you do babysitting. Like, when you're babysitting, like, you're in charge. And you'd say, like, until your mom and dad get home, I'm in charge, put away your toys. And then brush your teeth and then go to bed. And the whole idea of like negotiating with, like a 6-year-old and be like, well, if I agree to this and that, will you then please do this? Like, that's wrong. You know, like, you don't negotiate with the 6-year-old. You don't negotiate in certain situations. You definitely don't negotiate with these erroneous and aberrant non-presences that are trying to gain presence through your life. That's the big stuff. It's trying to come alive through you and through your agreement and through your observership and through your life experience, and literally to be a third wheel or unexpected, undesired presence in the relationship that's a direct relationship you have with God. Like, you don't need an intermediary between you and God. Do you understand? This is another big thing to clear out. So it's not going to stop torturing you just because you agree to it and agree to its presence and think of it as self. And then also, you're not supposed to have an intermediary between you and God. And that's clearing out this area here, violet to white light. That would be like up where my ceiling fan is. Clear out all that stuff, because that's where you got a lot of cultural debris, religious implantations, even extraterrestrials. Anything that comes along and says, I don't think you're allowed to have your superpowers of manifestation, but I'll be controlling your superpowers of manifestation, and you can just sign all of that power over to me, and then maybe if you're lucky, and if you're good, and if you pass my tests, then you can go to heaven. If I say you're good enough, the thing coming between you here, is going to determine whether or not you have the right shaped personality. That's wrong. That itself is a power abuse, and I clear it out. You clear out these lies and false assertions of the things that usurp power and that say, oh, you want to touch God? Okay, great, you're going to have to go through me. Like, that's an aberration. It's like, or something else that says, I'm here sculpting you. Look, I'm the sculptor. I'm like, here's my mallet and here's my chisel and I'm sculpting. Like, who are you to sculpt me? This is not right, because the poop is going to sculpt me. That is not right. It is definitely not the way that the reality is supposed to be structured. Divine presence is supposed to sculpt you. So you understand the poop is like, I'm going to take over reality and make a bunch of bad stuff happen. And I'm sculpting you into a better person. Like, no, you're not sculpting anything. You're just torturing people. Just torturing people. That is the Techno-Inquisition. That is the ongoing Techno-Inquisition, and what I just shared is deep stuff, and I'm a big troublemaker for actually saying it with my words. Joyce, thank you for being here. Says, you are a fabulous being, and I love you dearly. Thank you. Thank you so much, Joyce. Love received. Love back to you. I'm so pleased to be connected to you, and it's very sustaining to hear that. Thank you. You make my day. Thank you so much, truly. Pedro says, I just ask in general so you could comment on all you have. Thank you. Actually, Pedro, I think that you're very wonderful at doing that. Sometimes you're very good at synopsizing, and then also sometimes you give me a door where you're kind of like, how about that thing? And I'm like, oh, thank you for mentioning that, because now I get to open that whole entire can of worms. So thank you for opening various cans of various worms. Not planaria. Pedro says, if you sense everything at once, there is no fun in reading a book. You would know the ending already. I better enjoy them here while I can. You are correct. It's a very, very different level of presence and level of experience. I joke when I tell you about these things here. Like, spoiler alert, you become the stars. All right? Spoiler alert, you're God. It's true. But you know what? You should enjoy the linear journey. You should enjoy the wisdom experience, the wisdom accruing experience of your perspective expanding and gaining more knowledge and gaining more self-knowledge, because it is a beautiful story. And there is a real joy in savoring the steps on the journey and savoring the levels of transformation that you go through. What's powerful about literature is that you go through a transformation when you read a narrative story. Like, you start out and you're feeling one way, and you're feeling one way about the characters and about the world, or watch a movie. And then as you read this book and more chapters, you feel differently. And then by the end of the story, and it comes to a culmination and a resolution, you're like, well, now I feel totally differently about the characters, their life, my life, human existence, than I did at the beginning of this book. And then if it's a good book, you're like, oh wait, now I want to go back to the very beginning. And now I want to read it again with all of the wisdom and insight and perspective that I've gained from having gone through this cycle one time. And that is literally what existence is. And that is what the sun and the stars are doing when they create a narrative structure through these emissions of timelines and light. They create a story structure, and they change and they learn and they grow as the author of reality and the author of life. And you grow and you grow through your experience of being submerged within that expression. And then at the end of it, it's like, oh wait, we could have done this better. Yes. And this part could be better. Yes. And I wish I'd known that there. Yes. And then the reality is emitted again in a slightly different and improved version. It's always getting upgraded, and your life experiences are a huge part of that upgrade. And that's also how you can look at like being responsive to a situation. You're like, okay, in all of these other stories or in all of these other versions of reality, I didn't do anything. Wah wah. But in this version of reality, things went different. In this version of reality, flying rainbow lasagna, I did something totally new, unexpected, and very revolutionary, and had a completely unexpected outcome. So think about that. There are, of course, many versions of reality where there's a cataclysm and Earth is destroyed, whatever, rivers of lava are running everywhere. But there's a different version of reality that you can be on, that you're like, no rivers of lava. Something better happened. Something better happened, and we didn't all get destroyed, and all the poop got cleaned up, and then we got to have an awesome, expansive experience. That is the ongoing experience of flying rainbow lasagna. You don't have to die. You don't have to have a cataclysm. You don't have to repeat the traumas of the past. You actually have the empowerment structure in this moment to write a much, much better narrative for yourself and your own health. First. Secondly, for your interpersonal dynamics, connection to your community and your environment. Next up, to your entire relationship to the sun, the stars, and the rest of the galaxy. And then I've told you this, like, things aren't perfect where I came from. Things are not perfect where I came from. Like, am I swimming through the backstroke and eating an interdimensional strawberry and wearing like a flowing robe and everything's great? No, there were actually problems at the higher dimensional levels too. Destabilizations at the lower levels, destabilizations at the higher levels. Everybody's got problems. And the idea is to create a rectification event that is, I guess the word is pan-directional, pan-dimensional, in every single direction. Telescoping into antiquity, projecting into the future, all lateral timelines, all possible levels of reality getting resolved. So not just cleaning up errant thoughts or errant possibilities or things, that narratives that you don't want to experience here in your little neck of the woods, but everything that you're connected to. That's big stuff. And that's also, you can understand, it's a high stakes poker game. Where it's like, ooh, look, like you can either be horribly destroyed, consumed by like an AI, like you can be chomped by a horrible monster and flushed down the cosmic toilet, or you can completely restructure reality and heal the entirety of existence and all time everywhere in a way that is very permanent and that will not revert into levels of pathology again. You risk big and you win big, and you have the opportunity in this life experience and in this collective planetary ascension to win big. Not that it's gamified, but I'm using an analogy that you can relate to. Lisa, thank you for being here, says, thank you. Wearing my flying rainbow lasagna dress, beautiful, dressed for class. Ibomac crystal skull cap, fantastic. I'm working on the organites for everyone. And integrated with this joy again while I cleared out the crapola in my river, sacred spot, that blocking the water from the free flowing again. No longer a host for parasitical energy projecting their crapola at me. No more, and so grateful for you and Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Thank you so much for that, and I'm truly grateful that you found my class and to connect with you, and that you are taking these concepts, Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and even physicality structures like the Iba crystals, and applying them so effectively to your own life and to your journey. Like I get very, very happy. Like if I'm a if I'm an art teacher and I'm like, this is a paintbrush, here, have one, go paint something beautiful. And then I see like what you're doing is painting a very, very beautiful story of your self-healing. I get so happy. I'm like, hooray, hooray, I cheer, thank you actually. And recognition flows and gratitude flows to everybody that I'm connected to, people that have followed my work for a long time and people that are very new. Because sometimes people have been just feeling like around the peripheral edges, they didn't actually know that they were connecting with me, but I think that they could still feel my telepathic broadcasts and the genetic transformations that are happening in this world, and that they've been doing the work, and that sometimes like they find me on the recommended video list. They're like, what's this strange video? Let's check in. And then it's like, yes, like that's the stuff. So sometimes what I'm sharing in these videos is a confirmation of what people have been doing on their individual journey for a very long time. Recognition and gratitude flows to all of you guys, because you're doing things that are revolutionary in your own life presences that are literally doing the impossible. Like, you know what? There's poop crapola that shouldn't exist. That's impossible. So you know what? Your transcendence, which is seemingly impossible, should also exist. If there's going to be levels of, if we're going to have a contest of impossibilities, it's like, okay, if that impossible stuff can exist, this impossible stuff can exist. But also I don't want it to appear as if it's arbitrary, because the stuff that seems impossible is actually made possible through divine intelligence. That it's these perfect patterns that create these harmonic structures of, let's say, supreme unlikelihood, but not impossibility. So there's stuff that's random and arbitrary. That's crapola. It's like, that's technically not supposed to exist. Imagine someone just writing a stupid story. And then this happened, and then this happened, and then an alligator, and then a zebra. None of this makes sense. They just randomly put things together. But the seemingly impossibilities are things that you're doing that are divinely ordained, are of such great unlikelihood that it seems like it couldn't happen, but it happens. And that's planetary healing. It's like so unlikely that it seems like it would take a miracle, right? But it does happen, and it is a miracle, and it is guided by divine intelligence, and it is also expressed through your own individual courage and your own individual willpower. And what I also love is that what I am here to do is to inform and inspire, but not to tell you what to paint in your painting. I'm like, here's the paintbrush, here's the empowerment teaching, here's how you do this healing, here's what I'm doing in my painting, take it and run with it. Go, do it. And then seeing what people do in their freedom, that is so pleasing and gratifying to me. And I'm always cheering for you. I'm like, you go, you do it, do your thing, do your thing, do your thing. I get very, very happy and very pleased when I see people making changes in their life, making transformation in their own life, in their social dynamics, in their community, and in the larger social structures. And that's been happening a lot in the past 20 years. And it's also an asymptotic curve that goes and happens a lot now in everybody's lives. I'm seeing a huge amount of profound transformation and profound courage and heroism of people taking responsibility, rising to the occasion and doing stuff and making stuff happen. So that's, you know, like it's the best thing. Like when you're a piano teacher and you're like, okay, like I'm going to teach you the basics of music, I'm going to teach you how to play, and then you find someone, they have a love for music and they generate music and they write songs and they perform and they go on. You're like, I'm very happy for that person. Like, I'm so happy watching people in their success. And it's because it's a mutual and collective success. And that's what it is when you really recognize all of your DNA antennae are connected together. All of your water is connected together. Do you know that? Do you know that the water inside of your body and the water inside of this carafe are talking to each other, and the water inside of my body and the water that is affected by the galactic central black hole consciousness, great conductor? All of this water is connected. Like, the more that you learn about what the world is, the physical world and the world of pure energy, the subtle world, the more that you see the entire thing is a miraculous unlikelihood. So then it just kind of makes sense. It fits. Like, okay, the reality in life is a miraculous unlikelihood, Add to that another miraculous unlikelihood. The world did not get destroyed. You successfully made it to the store, got the coconut milk, and came home. And so much more happened that generated and sustained a world of longevity. Pedro says, this would work better as a drawing or cartoon. Okay, he says, I see us getting stronger and something really pan-dimensionally big rising. You zoom out and you see us lifting a big broom and it comes down and sweeps and rectifies all putis, crapola, and distortions in the timelines. I love it. Very, very good. I'd love to see that as a little New Yorker cartoon. I think that is a perfect image, and maybe I'll wrap it up on that so that I'm going to say magical words now so that someone can get a walk in the park. All right, we don't have to spell it out. Yes, but very, very beautiful image, and I thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I always do this now, so if there's any other questions or comments, or I always open up the floor if anybody would like to unmute and say anything or share for the people that catch the archive, now is a perfect time to do so. Pedro says, love the lasagna. Thank you. Love back to you. Love received and love back. It's very genuine. Truly. Truly. Appreciate everyone who's able to be here live during the actual Zoom broadcast that I do. I'm also really appreciating everybody who catches the archive. There's about 300 or 400 people who very, very regularly catch the archive, either on my YouTube or my Patreon, and I'm very, very pleased and grateful that you're attenuating and joining your mind and with everything that we're thinking about and talking about here, and doing lasagna patterns in your own life. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Endless encouragement, recognition, and positive energy flows to you. And that's from me, and also you have a ton of support and a ton of recognition from yourself in a higher dimensional state. Christina says, thank you, Christina Marie. Thank you, Aurora, so much as always. That is all very welcome. Thank you, Christina. Thank you for being here. And also, welcome to a couple of new people just joined on the semester last week and this week. So thank you, welcome new students, and so pleased that you found, from whatever way, if it was from recommended videos or word of mouth or whatever it was, so pleased that you connected here with the class and joined on. Thank you so much.